some time ago. I also note that we've got Justin Wong from Stuff here. Welcome. Cool. Take it away, Sean.
Okie Good afternoon. So Glenn's got to run through the paper, but yeah, there's really, as we're getting close to the revocation or revoking of Mackay's to Peka Peka, we thought it was timely to give you an update on the, obviously because a lot of you weren't involved in the previous work, which seems like a long time ago, but so Glenn's going to run through all of that and present where we are at the moment, and then we possibly come back for another session once you've had a chance to digest all of that information. Glenn.
Thank you, Sean, and good afternoon. Good afternoon to you all. And just to read off the slide here, the purpose of today's briefing is just to give you an update, discuss the background, and there is a bit of background around the renaming of Old State Highway 1, discuss the 7-section approach that was part of the last process, and discuss the potential names that were around then, and have a talk about the process from here. 2017, Mackay's to Peka Peka M2PP opened, quite some time ago. Once the revocation of the old state highway is complete later this calendar year, Waka Kotahi will transfer the ownership and the responsibility to council for Old State Highway 1 from Poplar Ave to Peka Peka. And reading off the slide there again, revocation is a formal process where Waka Kotahi transfer a state highway designation to a local, being council road designation. So it goes from a highway to a local council road. No. Once a state highway has been revoked, the name state highway cannot be used for addresses purposes, and changes to addresses on state highway cannot be made until it's revocated to council. Way back in 2015, the old state highway renaming process commenced, and that involved pretty extensive discussions and consultation. That included a lot of parties, councillors, community board, TWOC, community and government agencies, police and fire, amongst others. Some of the key timelines in the process was in 2016, elected members were briefed, including on the 7-section approach, and I'll come back to a plan with a 7-section on in a moment, and importantly retaining Amoia and Rumataka street names, so 2 existing names on the old highway. TWOC was briefed and asked for a working party comprising of the district's 3 iwi representatives and a local historian to research names for Old State Highway 1 that represent the district's cultural and social history. At the same time, council confirmed a council-led process with a 7-section approach, recognising the role of the community boards to consult with their communities. Later that year, the working party reported back with their recommended names, and again, I'll come to that shortly. The community boards were updated. In 2017, Council invited the community to have their say on names for the 7 sections, including names proposed by the working party. In 2017, the renaming process was put on hold. In 2021, State Highway 1 from Paikokariri to Mackay's Crossing, and it's known as Section 1 in this renaming process, was in fact not revoked by Waka Kotahi and was renamed State Highway 59. So that Section 1 from Paikokariri to Mackay's Crossing that was going to be revoked, in fact wasn't. Last year, Peka Peka to Otaki, PP20, was opened. So the northern end of this M2PP was opened, and today the renaming process restarts with this briefing. Here's a plan showing the 7 sections, and you can see section 1, Paikakariki to Mackay's Crossing, is now the state highway, so not being revoked. Section 2 is Poplar Ave to Kapiti Road in green on the plan behind me. Then we come into the 2 names, Amoia Street and so forth, that aren't proposed to be changed. Then we come into section 3, which is Paraparamu North to Waikanae River. Then we have section 4, which is from the river to Waikanae Township. We then have section 5, which is from Waikanae right through to Peka, and that's Peka Roundabout, Peka Road. We have section 6, the small little strip of Hadfield Road connection. And then we have section 7, which is Peka Road to Te Kowhai Road. So that's where the 7 sections that we refer to come from. These 7 sections typically reflect the current demarcation of Old State Highway 1, such as Main Road South, Main Road North, etc. Using a 7-section approach to the renaming will largely allow current house numbering to be retained. So whilst some houses may in fact have their street names changed, it would largely allow the numbering to be retained. Importantly, the renaming process is required to consider guidance from LINZ, New Zealand, Australia standards of road naming. And that's important because the standards endeavour to remove any repetition, ensure that things like safety is considered so that there's no repetition of Main Road North, Main Road South, Main Street, so forth. So in each district or city, there is just one name that is similar or very similar. So if any of us were, for example, ringing an ambulance, there's minimal chance of Main Road getting confused with Main Street, Main Road South, North, and so forth. The 7-section approach had some advantages over giving Old State Highway 1 continuous name. If Old State Highway 1 had one continuous name, it would mean renumbering and renaming well over 1,000 properties for an address purposes.
Maybe just on, so there was quite a lot of debate. I mean, there's a couple of things there. Glenn mentioned the renaming process vesting with council in terms of the decision. The current policy is that community boards normally have that delegation, but because of the nature of the highway and how it extends through bits of the district, but it's sort of one continuous road, the decision was made that council would make that decision. The other one around the sections, as opposed to one continuous name, again, Glenn's mentioned the issues around numbering and cost, and so again there was a lot of discussion around that, and council at the time agreed that they would stick to the current delimitation, basically in terms of the number of sections and the names.
Right. Planning for PP20 impacts on naming section 7. Planning for the revocation of PP20 section of Old State Highway 1 is underway. So that picks up from the Peka roundabout and heads up to Otaki and beyond. Section 7 of the renaming, so that's from Peka Road to Te Kowhai Road, is now part of one longest contiguous section of Old State Highway 1 that goes right through to at least Otaki. One road name may be appropriate from Peka roundabout to, say, the Otaki River, so that whole 9 or 10 kilometre stretch. The proposal is that remaining of section 7 is undertaken as part of a future Old State Highway 1 PP20 renaming process. When M2PP was thought about, PP20 wasn't even in the planning, so now it's changed. Thanks, Sean. The Working Party agreed on one name for each of the 7 sections, and their report provides background about each name's historical and cultural significance, and importantly, the relationship with the local area. Their names are on the up here, so the 7 sections, and again to recap, Section 1 is no longer required, and Section 7 is likely to be undertaken as part of a future PP20 process. Thanks, Sean. Earlier this year, Council passed a resolution to cease work on Te Urihi, and one of the bullet points up there, the middle point, is that that Council resolution reflects on the key outcomes Te Urihi was seeking to achieve, and alongside key partners and stakeholders, builds on or develops work streams to deliver on these aspirations. And one of these aspirations was to provide an opportunity for mana whenua stories to be told in an integrated and visible and mana enhancing way. Adopting the Working Party's names may help deliver the aspirations of this resolution. The consultation that was undertaken by the Community Board came up with names, and again you can see the recommended names down the right hand side of the slides. Main Road South, Main Road North, Main Road, Horrobin Road, and Section 7, which we're proposing to be delayed. Renaming Old State Highway 1 is complex. In 2016, when this was done, there was 227 properties along Old State Highway 1 that would be affected by any road name or numbering changes. As we talked on earlier, revoking Old State Highway 1 means it can no longer be called a state highway. Sections 3, 5 and 7 have State Highway 1 addressees. Sections of Old State Highway 1 have different names, including Main Road South, Main Road North, Amoia and Rumataka Street. Again, 7 sections largely reflects the existing numbering and mostly enables residents to keep the same street numbers. When we went out for public submissions, there was 1,077 submissions received, which is a huge number of submissions. For example, when we recently went out for the speed limit reviews, we got about 400 submissions the first time, and I think maybe about 200 submissions the second time. So a bit under 1,100 submissions is a massive amount of submissions. Some observations from those submissions: 61 of those submissions did not suggest a name and gave general comments about what they believed was appropriate. 68 submitters were identified as living on Old State Highway 1. A bit over 100 asked for the current names to be retained. A bit under 300 were in favour of one name for Old State Highway 1. Over 500 identified names for sections of Old State Highway 1. And 58 were in support of Working Party names. So unlike some consultation we do, there wasn't a clear thread, a clear support. There was a multitude of views, and fair to say some fairly strongly held views. Here's a table that just highlights some of the submission names and grouped by highest support, and that's the highest number of support, second highest support and third highest support. If you see section 3 there, Southwood's family, if we group the Southwood family together, had some support, 29, and then the varying supports up there just for information. Again, section 1, rename, no action required. Section 2, from submissions, had Main Road South, Main Road North was high pulling section 3 as well, and section 2 and 3. Now, as far as the road naming standards go, Main Road South, Main Road North are not in accordance with the standard. They don't meet it. They have what's called a terminal indicator at the end, Main Road South, which isn't a name that's recognised under the standards. It causes confusion as opposed to a simple main road. Section 4, main road, not a preferred name under the standard because there's already a main street in Otaki. So where you have a main road, the standards have a clear view that you shouldn't have a street, an avenue or a boulevard of the same name. Thank you. Funding was provided way back in 2016 by Waka Kotahi as part of the revocation process, and that was about $150,000. That funding was used during that process. No further funding has been allocated for the renaming process. What may funding be used for? Redirection of mail for houses that addresses that have a name or a numbering change. Sign writing potentially, installation of new road signs, staff resources and communication material, printing, consultation, other costs or items of compensation potentially. And the last bullet point on that slide there, it's expected that costs will range from $50,000 to $150,000 depending on the process followed, and that's that's variable really. Next steps is a briefing on the subject with TWOP, and certainly want to go back to LINZ and confirm any changes that fits with their requirements. And yeah, I think that's about us from the briefing for today. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
I'm not seeing any lights yet. I have a couple. So the future PP20 renaming, are there other sections that will need to be renamed as well as part of that process?
Yes, there is. There's other sections that go right through to essentially Taylor's Road up to the north of Otaki that'll be part of that. So it's not one continuous section of road. It's potentially there could be 2 or 3 names for that road.
And is there a time frame that we're required to do this by? I'm just wondering about rolling the 2 into one project rather than doing 2 separate ones.
So once the road revokes, I guess that gives the council the legal authority to change the name because it then becomes a local road. I don't think there's any reason why you have to immediately look to change. You know, the naming as it sits at the moment has been State Highway 1 or Old Main Road North-South since 2017. So I don't believe there's any sort of statutory obligation to do it within a time frame other than there are a number of residents that live along there that have been asking for some time to get some certainty over the new names. But the issue with delaying it to link it up with Peka Peka to Otaki would be that's probably another 2 years away in terms of completing the revocation there. So, so no, I don't think there's any legal requirement that you must do it. You could potentially wait, but you would then be on to another potentially 2 years before then. And as I mentioned, over the years there have been residents that have asked for that work to happen, and there's a little bit of ambiguity around some of the old State Highway 1 north and south addresses. Without getting into the detail of those, there's definitely some residents that would prefer that we moved on to something different from what there is there currently.
You mentioned that there are potentially problems with, say, ambulances going to the wrong addresses with Main Road South, Main Road being in Otaki as well, and Main Road North being south of Main Road, I think. Have we got any kind of information on whether that's been happening in the past, even anecdotal information, or is it just something that is a potential risk?
Certainly not aware of any incidents of that happening, but the standards The people that deal with the standards from LINZ are very clear that it's a real issue, and yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go to Nigel.
Yep. The
So we're asking questions at the moment. We're
Yeah.
not giving any steers for future direction of travel.
No,
we're
no.
just going to digest this information and
Yeah.
aware we don't have mana whenua in the room.
Yeah,
So,
I'm one of the affected parties here, actually. I live in both Main Road North and Main Road South, depending on which one I want to put on my address. Did a lot of people identify getting mail to the address as an issue? Because, I mean, I have a post office box, and so does the farmer next to me. And that's what a lot of people do, is just have a post office box. Because rural, I mean, mail delivery is pretty intermittent now anyway. So I don't know, was that a problem back in 2016? Be less so now, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only aware of, I think, 2 properties that have been in direct contact to say, I'm not sure if they're similar to yours, Councillor, but that problem with Main Road North-South State Highway 1 has created problems for them over the years.
Yeah.
Those are the only ones that I'm aware of. And again, Glenn might be able to talk around in terms of the submissions. Don't know if we had a huge number, but...
No, I don't believe we had a huge number that raised that, but certainly there seemed to be some, I don't know if choice is the word, or historical usage of names, and pretty much depending on which name you chose to use or had used, your neighbours could use completely different ones, addresses. So,
Yeah. I mean, and I wonder, it also gets a little bit interesting when you've got 7 sections of road, and like one section doesn't end at a bridge or a river, it just ends halfway between this bit and this bit, and now you're there and I'm on this road, and now I'm on this road. Do you know what I mean?
as far as the demarcation goes, LINZ was reasonably happy with the demarcation, and that there were major roads. The one that I was interested in was Hemi Street, where if we head north and we picture driving through Waikanai, we come to Hemi Street, because where the speed changes, where it goes very much from urban to rural, and there's no potential chance of that changing, because at Hemi Street, as you're heading north, the houses all enter off or Parada Street, or one of those streets from the west, so it feels very like a distinct change. The fact that there's a roundabout at Peka Peka and Kapiti Road, so they're quite strong demarcations, a bit like the Otaki River would be an accepted demarcation for addresses.
Yeah. And I noted that only 5% of people supported the names from the Working Party, which means 95% didn't. So it's like not an overwhelming endorsement. And I just wonder, you could call it tahi rua tore whā, you could run the numbers however you wanted to, but the reality is most people are probably just going to refer to it as Old State Highway, right? So I thought it was, when I saw SH1, I thought it was Sophie Hanford 1 highway, which I thought was, apt. But I can see why the previous council kicked this down the road, and I can see why this one will probably do the same, because I'm not really sure. If you've got 95% of people aren't happy with the names that are up, what do you go back and go right back through that entire process? At what point is it, this is a piece of string, this thing, right? And good luck. Really?
Yeah, the question...
Trying to resolve it.
I don't know, I can't remember the wording of the submissions, but I don't know if they were specifically opposed, but had an alternative. There were lots of people that had a view on what the road should be called, I guess, and not all of them supported.
Yeah, but the bottom number, I think it was 58 out of 1,107 said that they supported the current names, which is just a bit under 5%, but,
Thanks, Nigel. When I was passing Waikanai, I thought it was the Nigel Wilson supermarket, but it's New World. Martin?
Just got a clarity there. You're talking about the standard, the LINZ standard, that sort of stuff. That's pretty pretty, that's our guiding on this? Like, we can't use that, it's off the table sort of thing? Or is it just a recommendation?
As with any standards, they're the standard that we work to, be it road naming or any other bridge standards or recycling standards or whatever standards. They're put together by experts, by working parties, by industry to have consistency, to have safety, to have uniformity, and road standards is no difference. Certainly as officers, we'd recommend adherence with the standard, and if we're ever deviating from a standard, that would be with caution.
Cool, that's cool. The Peka Peka to Otaki stretch of road, what was the reason why we wouldn't perhaps look at doing that now? If we're going to be doing these ones, why not just get that one out of the way as well? I know it's a bit of a blasé way of putting it, for what I know has been a very convoluted and fraught process, but for that reason, potentially, why not get that all done at once?
The revocation of that highway may still be a couple of years away.
Oh, right, so we can't do that part until the revocation's done.
Well, because as I mentioned, you could, if you wanted to, choose to look to name those sections, but then you'd have to wait, in theory, until it was revoked before you implemented those names.
Well, I just again, if we're going to go through the process, it was just that might be something to consider as such.
It's probably more, I guess, a timing and a cost issue as well, in terms of we haven't factored in adding that process in to the current timetable in terms of M2PP.
Cool. Again, just sorry, not again, but just tying into Ward Councillor here, that stretch of road that does go past Southwoods, I noticed in the submissions that came back, and there was some push from the Southwoods family with regards to some naming and that. Would that have been taken into consideration by the panel that was put together to look at these street names? I mean, were they quite focused on Indigenous naming versus just naming in general for the history of the area?
The working party was representative of our iwi and a local historian, and they were looking at historical names with strong ties, and with a focus on iwi names.
Lovely, thank you.
I got Richard Mansell online.
Right, sorry.
We can hear you.
Technology. Thanks. I'm just looking at the current step or the next steps, and the paper's coming saying we're not doing anything on sector 1, not doing anything on sector 7. What are we doing with 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6? Is there going to be a recommendation that the names that have been submitted and proposed are accepted, or we go back for more consultation, in which case we're buying into the whole big fight that we had last time that delayed everything? I just wonder what the process is from here.
So we're just getting background today. We don't have any iwi representatives in the room, so just a background for information briefing today, Richard.
Right, okay. Thanks. That's all.
Jocelyn?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm still actually not clear whether, so on the proposed names, the community board actually went out to consultation. That's what they recommended to council, where the submissions were what the community boards received. So in terms of looking at the proposed names that the community boards put forward, I'm still not clear whether Main Road is acceptable to LINZ or not, or Main Road South and Main Road North.
So, Councillor, there was submissions from the public. There was also some names that the community boards put forward themselves as different, or not necessarily different, were different names. Main Road North, Main Road South aren't in accordance with the road naming standards. So, from a road naming standard point of view, no, they're not acceptable.
But Main Road is?
Main Road is, but we have a main street in the north of our district in Otaki.
Yeah.
So that means that naming a new road, Main Road, wouldn't be in accordance with the standard, so that we aim to have, from a road naming point of view, one name for each road or street that's not repetitious, that can't get confused.
Right, okay. So it is my memory that the community board interviewed those people who made submissions and then put their recommendations forward. So obviously this is about giving us what has happened before about what the working party has now suggested. The question is down the line is whether it goes back to the community board and through that same process, or whether it goes down a different process. Is that correct?
Well, I guess that's for you to contemplate, councillor, in advance of us reconvening once we've had opportunity to involve mana whenua
Yep.
in that next conversation and the next stage of this process.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Thank you. Actually, no, there's one other thing too. So I know during that, because I was the chair of the community board at the time, so I remember at the time, so there were these individual sections that needed to be named, but there was also quite a lot of conversation about having the whole highway from Paikokariki to maybe to Otaki having a single name, such as, for example, and I'm not saying we suggest that, like Forgotten Highway. So you actually had that overarching all these individual names. So it's a tourism name rather than the name that people use for the individual postal addresses. Is that also on the table?
That definitely was a conversation. I think even economic development might have been involved in providing some response. The issue at the time was actually what would you look to link that road to in terms of anything. You know, if it's the Wine Trail, Forgotten Highway, Coastal Highway. There wasn't anything you could pinpoint that was very specific to travelling along that old state highway that was linked to any sort of tourism or...
Yeah, I know. I think it fell over. The reason it never progressed was because this whole process fell apart, so it was put on the back burner. So
No, I'm not
No,
sure
I
that
think-
that's true. I think it was considered and wasn't regarded as a worthwhile proposition
yeah,
with the road.
I think it would be useful
Road
to rethink about whether that's actually something that would be good to consider. I personally think it would be.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
We'll have a think about that. Liz?
Following on from that, I was going to ask a similar question. It's not clear to me why we need 7 sections here. I mean, other than it avoids people having to race out and buy new numbers for their letterbox. I can't see a convincing case to have it split up. And I do think there would be a name. It doesn't have to be linked to tourism or like Forgotten Highway, but just for practical purposes, it would seem, much more practical to have one name for a continuous stretch. And if people have to go out and buy some new letters from Mitre 10, can we give them a discount coupon or something to get some new letters? Or
So,
I mean, what's so hard about that?
I don't. So I guess the question is, aside from the inconvenience to residents, is there any other reason why there shouldn't be a long stretch of road with over 1,000 properties on it? Like, would it be harder for ambulances to find a specific house along that road, anything like that?
From a road naming point of view, one road named for the whole stretch is acceptable, providing it wasn't a repetition name or wasn't used somewhere else in our district. That is entirely council's decision.
So we could call it like Turapraha Highway or something like that. I mean, who knows what? It doesn't. I don't think it has to have a. Well, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be a tourism-related name. Just a name that symbolises something for our district, and which is completely practical. Because what I see there is a set of very confusing names, some of which I know people are going to say, but how do I spell that? How do I pronounce that? But whatever. I'm just saying, there has to be a simple solution to this that people will relate to. It's just, I remember when it was, I mean, I wasn't on council obviously at the time, but I do remember there was a lot of fuss when it was in the media earlier, and people. Pardon?
Okay, well, that's
Well, I was thinking of calling it the.
that's one
fossil
option
fuel
for
highway,
bringing back to
actually.
the table. That's one option for bringing that. Okay, so that's one option for bringing back to the table when we talk about where to from here.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go any further down that
No,
path
no,
until
but-
until that time.
Yeah, but also just the other thing is when it comes back, can we please have the information on the significance of the proposed names? I'm assuming that would be part of it, would it?
Yeah, there's a report, working group, the working party report has been circulated.
Oh, is there?
Yes.
Oh,
So
right.
it talks
I
about
haven't
each of the
read that yet.
names, the significance, the
okay.
history.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of information there that's quite
Yeah.
useful, and happy to consider that one name for the single road. Again, is something we can come back with.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, Cam.
Good. So from the perspective of having it all one name, so my older sister used to live on Great South Road in Auckland, which is quite a long road. But what they did is each suburb, they restarted the numbers. So you could actually have multiple number 10s Great South Road, but you had to make sure you had the correct suburb on it. So it was a nightmare for the postal people if there was no suburb. And it still got delivered to the wrong places sometimes. So she was 39 Great South Road, Papakura. She would still get 39 Great South Road, Drury, delivered to her just because the post people would make mistakes. So, I know it's nice to have a long name, but there's some definite cons to having one name the whole way. And certainly from a postal point of view, I think that would be quite hard from their perspective.
Did you have something to say?
Recommendation is we would only have number 1 Great South Road in one place. We wouldn't have 3 or 4 of them in our district.
That would work better.
Sequential numbering if it's a road, and starting from 1 and going for how far through you're doing, and it might be 12 or 1300 on that stretch of road to Peka Peka.
Yeah, so a bit of initial pain, but better longer term. Yeah.
Potentially,
Well,
maybe.
unless we subdivide between Waikanai and Otonga.
Okay, Nigel, back again.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. Parramatta Road in Sydney is 35 kilometres long, so there's plenty of long roads around. I just wonder, this seems a bit of a slap to the working group. The community boards, none of the community boards have adopted or have suggested adopting any of the names that the working group came up with. So I was just wondering if the working group included members of the community boards, but it would just seem in any practical sense. I know because I wasn't involved at the time when this first came up, but I do know that there was quite a degree of derision in publicly, not for the names, but just for the fact that you're taking a road and breaking it up into 7 names. And people went, well, how the hell are you going to remember all of those? Because you're not, and you're probably not. As far as emergency services are concerned, they do have GPS, so it's just not a problem to find somewhere if it's out rural.
Yeah.
So
I think what wasn't well understood is that it's already 7 sections. It's not one section at the moment.
Yeah. But it just doesn't have a name. It doesn't have 7 names. You know what I mean?
It does actually have 7 names. Yeah.
But nobody uses them, surely.
There's a Moorhere Street, Main Road North, Main Road South, Main Road. What's the other one?
Main Road. Yeah. It's the old state highway. Anyway, good luck.
So Paikakariki did endorse the working report.
Yeah, there is an exception to that trend. Yeah. Okay, we're going to wrap it up there, and we'll look forward to the next discussion. Thanks, everybody.